Today, we're diving into a really powerful new idea in the world of conservation. It's called a reciprocal environmental agreement, and it's an approach that makes us ask some pretty fundamental questions about how we relate to the natural world.
Where does all this come from? Well, the ideas we're exploring are based on a fantastic talk given by Jacob Willey at the Antwerp Zoo Symposium on Conservation Research, and the incredible on-the-ground data, the proof, that comes from the PhD research of Jacques Quenbo, which was supervised by Jacob Willey and Stein Spielman.
Let's just kick things off with a pretty challenging thought. For more than a century, the goal has been to protect the planet, right? But what if our best intentions, all those big plans to save nature, have actually been hurting the very people who call those places home?
And that question leads us straight to the core of the problem, this flawed legacy of conservation that has left a deep and frankly damaging sense of alienation.
I mean, just let this sentence sink in for a moment. I'm now a foreigner in my own land. This one quote just captures the devastating impact perfectly. For so many people, this became their reality. You see, traditional conservation often meant creating a protected area by forcibly removing communities from the lands their ancestors had lived on for generations. It created this profound sense of loss and injustice.
This whole problem really came from a huge misunderstanding. The old way of thinking was built on this myth of a pristine wilderness that was somehow completely separate from people. But the reality is what scientists now call a social-ecological system. It's a way of saying that humans and nature aren't two different things. They are one single, tangled-up system constantly shaping one another.
And you can really see this clash of worldviews here. On the one side, you have this flawed perspective where nature is just a commodity. Humans are always in conflict with it, and local people are seen as a threat. But then you have the local reality. Nature isn't a commodity, it's home. Harmony is possible. And the local people, they have this incredibly deep generational knowledge of their environment. This massive disconnect led to policies built on injustice.
Okay, so it became pretty clear that the old way wasn't working. And that kicked off this long search for a better way, which led to a pretty clear evolution in how we think about conservation.
You can actually see how our thinking changed over time. Back in the 1800s, it was all about protectionism, just building fences around parks and kicking people out. That caused that alienation we talked about. Then, fast forward to the 1970s, and we tried community-based approaches. Better, but they were often still too top-down. And in the 90s, we got these integrated projects that tried to balance everything, but they often ran into huge problems, like benefits not being shared fairly.
So, you see, each of these steps was an improvement, but none of them really cracked the code. And that is exactly where this new idea comes into play, the Reciprocal Environmental Agreement Framework.
So, what in the world is a reciprocal environmental agreement, or an REA for short? Well, it's a collaborative pact. But, and this is the absolute game changer, the agreement is not with the whole community. It's with individuals, with single households. The conservation group and a family sit down, negotiate as equals, and commit to specific actions that benefit both of them.
This comparison really highlights why this is such a big deal. You see, those big community-wide projects often stumble over two major hurdles. First is something called elite capture, where the most powerful people in the village grab all the benefits for themselves. Second, they depend on the whole group getting along, which isn't always easy. REAs just sidestep those problems entirely by focusing on the individual household. It's a direct, long-term investment in people who actually want to participate.
And the process itself? It's actually wonderfully straightforward. First, you negotiate. You talk as equals, no more top-down commands. Second, you commit. Both sides sign a formal agreement spelling everything out. Third, you implement the plan. You get out there and do the work, providing real, tangible support. And fourth, you monitor the results to make sure it's actually working for everybody.
Okay, so this all sounds fantastic on paper, but the billion-dollar question is, does it actually work in the real world? Well, let's take a look at the hard evidence from a study in Cameroon that involved 220 different households.
First off, let's look at hunting. The data showed a really clear shift away from destructive commercial hunting, that's, hunting to sell bushmeat for profit, and a move towards sustainable subsistence hunting, which is just hunting to feed your own family. So it's not about stopping hunting altogether. It's about bringing it back to a sustainable level. That is a massive win.
And this wasn't just good for the animals. It was really good for people's livelihoods. By providing support for things like sustainable cocoa farming, the project had a direct, positive economic impact. People who participated saw real increases in both their overall household wealth and their income from cocoa.
But for me, this next one is maybe the most powerful result of all: the impact on food security. Just look at this. The number of families who are facing severe food insecurity just plummeted. Now, they didn't all become totally food secure overnight, but moving from severely to mildly insecure, that is a life-changing improvement. It means stability. It means you can sleep at night.
You know, this approach also changed mindsets, which is absolutely crucial. Before the REA project, participants were kind of like, yeah, sure, we should protect wildlife. But after participating, after seeing the direct benefits for themselves, that agreement became so much stronger. They weren't just bystanders anymore. They became true partners in conservation.
And yes, the positive impacts definitely extended to the wildlife. For a really sensitive species like the chimpanzee, any little improvement is a huge sign of hope. And in just 2 years, researchers found there was an increase in chimpanzee signs in the area. That suggests the habitat was becoming safer for these incredible animals to actually come back.
So, what does all this add up to? When you put it all together, it really points toward a vision of restoring that harmony between people and nature, the very harmony that was broken so long ago.
This quote just says it all, doesn't it? Instead of trying to force a solution on a whole group of people, you focus on changing hearts and minds one person, one family at a time. And if you can do that, well, you really can change the world.
Ultimately, what these REAs do is create this amazing positive feedback loop. They improve the ecological integrity, which is great for wildlife. At the very same time, they boost the economic well-being and the human wellness of the people living there. But maybe most importantly, by investing directly in people, they start to heal that old wound of alienation, rebuilding that connection between communities and their land.
So I guess the big takeaway is this. The old way created alienation by taking things away from people. This new model seems to reverse that by investing in people. It suggests that maybe, just maybe, the key to saving nature isn't about building higher fences, but about building stronger, more respectful partnerships.
And you know, research this important doesn't just happen on its own. We have to give a shout out to the organizations that provided financial support. The Darwin Initiative, the Antwerp Zoo Center for Research and Conservation, and the Global Minds Operational Grant of Ghent University.
If this has sparked your curiosity and you want to learn more, please don't hesitate to reach out. For questions about the talk itself, you can contact Jacob Willey. And for specific questions about the RAE research, Jacques Coimbu is your guy. Thank you so much for tuning in.